Here at Funds Network, we're committed to putting you at the heart of everything we do. So earlier this year, we conducted research to understand the key business challenges faced by advisory firms today. One of the most pressing issues our research highlighted was the need to drive efficiencies around business management. How do you recruit and retain the right people? Stay current with the latest training? Boost your business productivity now and plan for the future? Well, to discuss all these issues, I'm joined by Dominique Vinicum, Nick Bamford, Elizabeth Rule, Sam Seacombe and Kath Gallagher. Welcome everyone. I'd like to start with recruitment, if I may. The average age of the advisor is, I think, in the mid-50s now, and we spoke earlier about the advice gap and the demand from younger generations for financial advice. And I often wonder who's going to be there to fulfil that demand, as you know, we have an ageing population of advisors. And I'd just like to ask you, perhaps first, Sam, what are you doing within your business to attract new advisors into your firm?
Well, it's a good question, and definitely we need new advisors into the profession. We're recruiting somebody every 6 months at the moment from outside of industry, some career changes, but mostly apprentices, and training them from scratch, because we're not finding that the market is, that there aren't many people available. And those who are available often come from a background of sales, which you know, we're trying to move away from. So lots of recruitment, lots of training, and doing it in-house.
Okay, thank you. Kath, may I ask you the same question?
Yeah, we do lots of in-house development, so administrator to paraplanner to advisor. That's been at the kind of heart of how we've grown our advisor force over the years, and I think as a result of that you get some fantastic role models and mentors, and I think that's really, really important, is kind of demystifying the role, and the more more time young people can spend actually with the advisors out on the job engaging with clients, the more appealing the role becomes.
Yeah, so for both of you it's about growing the talent from within.
Yeah.
Do you have a view on
same, all of the advisors are homegrown, and most started as paraplanners and have come through. And then it gives the advisors then have some appreciation of the paraplanners' workloads and what has to be done as well, which I think is quite important. So
we were talking earlier about the fact that, you know, it's not an industry that people necessarily target unless they happen to have known somebody within the industry, whether it be a family member or a neighbour, and so the more that financial advisors can become advocates and champions for the industry, the more likely we are to see people actually proactively wanting to come in.
And I think again, some young people we've taken on, they tend to, you know, if they're graduates particularly, they're very capable, quick to learn, they rattle through the exams very, very, very quickly, but the skills that are often harder to develop, of course, the people skills. And that, as you said, comes from shadowing and sitting in on all the different client meetings, and is more successful with some than others. You know, that for me is the biggest gamble. You know, they're more than capable of learning the tax rules and that side of it, but it's, are they going to always have the right cultural fit, if you like, and capacity to grow those client relationships over the long term.
Yeah, I think culture is a big word there, isn't it? And we've had some success in, as Kath describes there, of moving people from that paraplanning role into the advisory role. And as long as they're with the firm long enough to get a full understanding of just what you expect them to do when they're in front of clients, and that culture of the firm is embedded in them, then that's a very good way of doing it. But it does, of course, cost the firm quite a lot of money to take somebody, as my colleagues here know, from outside the profession and develop them to that level.
And I guess in the past, the current generation of financial advisors, a lot of those were spawned from direct sales forces and banks. And as you say, Dominique, they learnt the sales skills first, if you like, and the people skills first, and then have had to relearn the technical skills. And I anecdotally, one hears about banks re-entering the business, so I have this vague hope that maybe, as well as you doing what you're doing to recruit from within, that there will be a new generation who will appear out of that, who will be trained up with those sales skills first.
I think recruitment is one of those challenges that we're faced with. It's one of the hardest ones, finding the right person, bringing them into the firm, embedding them in the culture, as I said, and getting them productive.
Oh, it's great to hear that you're all doing your bit to bring new people through. And if I may move the discussion on a little bit and look at insourcing versus outsourcing, there's a lot of conversation around that at the moment, and I guess we've seen a lot of outsourcing in the context of paraplanners and I guess investment management. Is that something you see continuing?
We do it all in-house. Right. I say all in-house, we've never managed funds or anything, that's always been outsourced. But as far as the actual advice process is concerned and all of the requirements around that, we do it in-house, and we don't plan to do anything different because it's part of that training process we were just talking about.
So it's important to understand the whole process. Yeah, understood.
Yeah, I think it's possible to outsource things which are, if you like, administrative in their nature. The problem with outsourcing anything that's going to impinge upon your brand is you run a risk of diluting that brand. So
does it save cost, do you think, the outsourcing?
I think it can do. I think it can do. But as I say, I think you want to hold the core of what you stand for as a business in the business. That could be paraplanning, for example.
Or it may not just be you're outsourcing for cost purposes, but it's where you're bringing in a skill that you yourselves don't have. And if you recognise your firm doesn't have those skills, so although I hold the compliance function, we've very much outsourced the compliance elsewhere, and I couldn't run the business without their guidance and help. And the same, we don't run our own investment funds, we outsource those as well. So freeing me up to sit in front of clients rather than make those investment decisions. So neither of those are on a cost basis decision. It's to bring in the expertise that I think the firm requires.
So you can focus on, like you said, the people skills and the added value stuff. Yeah, okay, fine. And one final question, in a slightly light-hearted manner, I guess, and that's what advice you would give your younger self if you were to come into the business. And I'm looking at you, Nick.
Yeah, if I can remember back that far, that would be good. I'd probably say something like, you wanted to be a zookeeper. What on earth were you doing joining an insurance company? So I'm not entirely convinced I would change anything that I've done. I don't think I could have moved, at the time I moved into running my own business, starting and running my own business, without all the previous experiences that I'd had. But I guess it comes back to that recruitment thing we were talking about. You want those young people to get all of the qualifications under their belt early on, but immediately apply themselves to learning about how to behave with people. So I'd probably say do everything I've done, but do it sooner.
Liz, what would you say?
I wouldn't change much if it's still this industry. I quite fancy the zookeeper role. So
but I think again, I came in 25 years ago, and to me then there weren't as many women. You're outnumbered today, Nick, but that doesn't often happen within the industry. And for me, as you said, to get the exams was the key. So to get to chartered as quickly as possible gave you the credibility. If you're young and female at that stage, I felt that there were some clients that would question your capacity and that sort of thing. So for young people coming in, I would say chartered is going to be the basic standard and should be the basic standard. And so to go through and get their chartered exams as quickly as possible would be my recommendation.
Do you have a view on that one?
I agree. Yeah. I would have qualified sooner. That would have been. I joined the industry because it was really convenient around babysitting. I still think that financial services is a fantastic career in terms of the flexibility it offers. You can run a family. Technology lets us do an awful lot of what we need to do from home now. But I joined a sales industry, and I would have got my qualifications sooner if I had realised then what I know now, that this is a profession. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. I'd like to move it on, if I may, and touch on the subject of behavioural finance and specifically how you interact with your clients. And if I could ask you, first of all, Dominique, here, in terms of what you do specifically to best understand your clients' needs.
Again, the benefit of such a long-established 50-plus year firm is that we've got many third-generation clients, and they're clients we know very well. So we see them, a lot of them, twice every year, and you do get to know. So we do then have the capacity to tweak and bespoke things exactly how they like. So I have a few clients, for example, that will say, I don't want to receive a newsletter. If I need to know something, I expect you to tell me personally. As you said, there's others that like face-to-face, there's others that like everything remotely and those things. So you need to adapt your offering to see how the client wants to work from that point of view, and then hopefully you'll keep them for the long term.
Yeah, I think it's about, in a way, how the advisor, how the planner behaves will be mirrored to some extent by the client. So one of the key things there is about keeping calm. And the stock markets will do what the stock markets do. We can't control that, nobody can. But when a client is getting to the point where they're feeling a bit panicked by it and they want to make an inappropriate decision, I don't think we as financial planners should get overexcited by that. I think we should be just calming the temperature down a little bit.
So you see your role as one of reassurance and
as well as challenging thinking, as well as being a sounding board for things they might want to do. But I think we always want to make sure that the client isn't behaving in a way that's inappropriate to their financial well-being in the future.
And how do you work with your clients, Sam?
I think helping clients understand risk, reward and term is vitally important to how they're going to then react to circumstances as they change around them. These are long-term relationships. We don't transact with clients products. We have relationships with them that go on for generations. So we do get to know them, but early on it's much easier to reassure a client in a certain market situation if you've had the discussion before the circumstances turn up. If you're trying to reassure them at the point and you've never mentioned before that markets go down, you're on a hiding to nothing.
And in terms of those emotions then, what is it that gets the client most uptight?
Losing money.
Losses, yeah.
They feel losses more acutely, and there's quite a lot of research which says twice as much as they feel gains.
Yeah, I'd turn that on its head and say what gets them most excited and keen about the thing for me would be showing them that they can do the things in their lives that they want to do. And I think that's the bit where they make decisions. We had some clients who came to us recently where we've been going through the whole financial planning process, and we were talking about what if scenarios, and they had come up with this one where they both wanted to stop work. They didn't like what they were doing. They'd been doing it a long time. And the scenario that we modelled for them was their ability to retire straight away, but we let the clients choose the title, and their title for that particular scenario was the stuff it scenario. And I just think that's human, isn't it? Stuff it. We're both going to resign and retire tomorrow. I just love that.
Just don't tell their employers.
And they can go back and resign.
Yeah. And as you said, focusing on keeping them focused on their goal and their target is important. And sometimes that may mean delivering news that they don't want to hear. Yeah. So, I want to access some money from my pension for something that for whatever it happens to be, you're like, well, let's see what the impact of that is on your final position that you said you wanted to be in by a certain day. So how much is that worth to you now compared to the goal at the end? And people say, well, are you saying I can't have my money? Well, no, I'm not saying that. Of course, it's your money and whatever, but it's my job to keep you on target for that goal. And so you've now got the choice of, do you take the money out now and diminish the goal later, etc. So
I like that, because I feel that many planners, many advisors kind of feel it's their money that they're in control of, whereas it's not our money. And as soon as you get that kind of attitude, it's not our money. You can stop them making errors, but actually come the bottom line, it's their money.
Yeah. Understood. Okay, thank you for that. And if I may move it on a little bit, and then in a sense moving back to one of our previous discussions about recruitment and this sort of thing. One of the dynamics within the market is the changing shape of the market. Typically, it's been dominated by small to medium-sized firms. To an extent, the IFA market has been a cottage industry. I think it's changing. As we've said, it's become more professional. But typically, it is small to medium-sized firms. I know, Kathy, you work for a larger organisation, but I see the shape changing. There's lots of consolidation going on. There's lots of vertical integration going on. I suppose the question here is: do we still see a role for small to medium-sized firms such as the ones that you mostly run?
I would say yes. I mean, I think you look at the other professions, and certainly there's been consolidation in the legal and the accountancy profession, but there are still multitudes of small firms that are delivering a personal, bespoke service to people. I think the succession side of that is difficult. Selling a firm, where you're trying to make sure that the culture remains the same and that the clients are treated the same and not charged a lot more, and that you can retain the staff. I think that's a hard one to pull off.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I see consolidators buying firms and then the directors of the firms suddenly pop up elsewhere because they've not been a great cultural fit. So, are there any alternatives to just selling out to a consolidator?
Oh, for sure. Employee benefit trust is something that Women's Wealth's very interested in. I don't imagine that I'll be able to recruit and retain the quality of advisors to grow that company unless I share the business with them. But the senior manager regime makes it quite quite a thing to take on a director's role in a financial services company. So if you set up a trust that they can own, so they own part of the equity but not all of the senior management responsibilities, I think that really helps grow a business, and all of the people involved in it are beneficiaries of its success. And I think that's a really great model for employees and for clients.
I think if more business owners investigated potential management buyouts, then you would be able to maintain the culture and the way that the business has been run. But you're not going to be able to extract your wealth and walk away as quickly as if you sell to a consolidator. So perhaps the owners need to think more carefully earlier about, build up the management team and get an exit strategy in place with the management team, or wait until they want to sell and then it's got to be a consolidator, because it's the only way they're going to realise the wealth that they've built up.
I mean, Kathy, you work for a larger organisation. Do you have a view on that sort of thing?
I think, well, internally we contend with succession planning, so it's been a great way to bring in fresh blood within the industry, is to be able to seed that from working alongside advisors that are at the other end of their career, as we say. But I think whether it's be internal or external, just that it's a long-term plan, isn't it, in order to create an outcome that is going to be a win-win-win situation for client, business owner, etc. And it's all interlinked, isn't it? The ageing advisor force, the lack of fresh blood means that when you come to exit the industry, there are very, very few options available.
I think, well, we've done it internally, as you suggested there. So it was a family business, so my dad retired, and 3 other directors since then. But again, we have effectively bought their client banks, and the clients have had the continued service, but brought in younger advisors. So ripe old age of 48, I'm the second oldest advisor there now, which is great. But the clients still get the continuity of the office and the systems and everything that they're used to. So I agree, it's the long-term view of it all that keeps the situation the same for the client. You don't want the clients to be massively disturbed by it all.
And I guess, and that's the point. I think if you look at it from the client's perspective, my impression is that clients prefer dealing with smaller organisations because of that trust thing that we discussed earlier. I think it's more difficult for a very large, faceless institution to engender that trust. Is that fair comment?
I think they get used to a person, maybe, and so you have to take a lot of care when you're moving another person into that role. So certainly in our organisation, where the younger ones are now looking after the clients that I've looked after for 25, 30 years, it's been a process again to get them to the point where they've been introduced. We have examples where clients, maybe 5 years ago, I'd have been very upset by saying that they didn't want me any longer, they wanted a new person. Now I'm not, because that's what we've been planning for.
I think that's really disdainful, as you see, in the press, where scenarios where clients are treated like commodities rather than individuals with their own free will and their own free choice, and you can trade clients like you can trade a commodity. And I think once that language starts to be used, then there's no long-term
that's a really good point.
There,
Okay, if I move things on, if I may, to the final topic, really, which is really about business efficiency. When I go around and speak to advisors, given all the stuff we've talked about costs of being in business, cost of regulation, and I guess costs of professional indemnity insurance and that sort of thing, it's and this all interacts with the pricing that we discussed earlier. Everybody is looking to take cost out of their business and take cost out of their business processes, really. So I'm interested in how you make your businesses as productive as possible, and maybe I can start with you, Dominic.
For us, I think it's a matter of freeing up the advisors to do what they do best, which is sit in front of clients and build the relationship. So we are perhaps more admin heavy than many firms. So we're 6 advisors and 6 administrators or paraplanners from there. So the report that you had there saying advisors spent 40% of their time, I don't recognise, certainly within our business, doing admin and those sort of things. Our advisors certainly.
So it's about being clear on who's
on
doing
roles,
what within the business.
Delegation of roles and who's doing what and who's responsible for what, and then making the meetings purposeful. So with our clients, obviously it's diaried, whether we meet them yearly or half yearly, but to try and make that the focus of their financial planning in the year, so that you're not then going back to do a better nicer a few months later, or whatever, or whatever. Obviously needs crop up if client situation changes, but in general trying to keep the focus to those meetings would tend to make things more efficient as well.
And Kath, in a larger organisation, are the other dynamics the same?
No, I think the principle's the same, in that you're trying to maximise the amount of time that advisors spend in front of clients. I think we are starting to see the review meeting change in nature, and I think part of that is to do with technology. So review meetings used to be very much focused around the valuation, a lot of time spent talking through the valuation, but now where clients can access that sort of information online on a daily basis, they don't want you to go along and tell them something that they already know. So the conversation very much shifts more onto their goals, their aspirations, etc., which is far more rewarding in any instance. So I don't think the industry has quite cracked how we use technology to support the advisor-client relationship. I think that's where the focus really has to be.
That's a good point. I mean, we touched on this earlier. I mean, what do you think, Liz, about the use of technology within businesses? Well,
it can only be more and more useful to embrace technology, to do things quicker, greener, more efficiently.
More accurately.
Yep. And so sort of tight processes where you're using technology as part of those processes, just making everything work seamlessly, that will cut a lot of the cost out of the business. And might help with some of the recruitment aspects as well, because if you've got a tight process where technology is delivering quite a bit of it, perhaps you don't need someone quite so experienced and well trained to do that. Whereas you would have needed someone, best part of the way to chartered to do a power planning report, if you can take some of that and industrialise it, then perhaps you don't need quite the level of capability.
Sorry to interrupt. What is the biggest drain on your time then within the business? If there's one part of the process which you could
just the amount of paper. So I'm quite interested at the moment in ways of corresponding with clients where we can make it sort of via a portal, via encrypted messaging, this, that and the next thing, because the level of paper is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think the frustration for us is just how long it takes to go through the whole process of delivering a financial plan to a client. And part of that is about data capture, just how intensive that is in terms of getting the data you need from various product providers, some of who don't have up-to-date modern systems. Maybe some of the pension scheme administration systems are not quick enough for our liking. And then because of the intensity of what we're delivering, it takes a lot longer to get back to the client with the solutions. So those frustrations are there all the time for us. How do we become more efficient? How do we do it quicker? And without a doubt, everything everybody's said here about use of technology to speed that up so that you free up time to do the really valuable stuff. And that's not saying in any way, shape or form that administration isn't valuable, but administration should be technology driven. And then we can spend more time with the client and more time delivering that.
Because it's that face-to-face engagement. Because
that's where they value.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a good point on which to wrap up. And thank you, everybody. That was a fascinating discussion, and I hope you find it as stimulating as I did and can take a lot from it to help you with your own profitable practice. If you'd like to find out more, you'll find a range of resources on our website, including bite-sized pointers to help drive greater profitability for your business. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.